sometimes Hans is half asleep in my chemistry class in the morning. Some of that is because he spent too much time the night before just watching videos, but some of that is because he's just tired. He's gone from a track practice to a play practice or even a performance, and he's rightfully just tired because he's done a lot of things. And one of the things that I think you'll see in his presentation is that he's been a highly involved student, not just academically, not just in athletics, but also in theater. And it's just been fun to see you share those talents with us and take one more moment to kind of gaze back at all those opportunities here with us. So let's turn it over to you.
I am the dumbest genius. Now, you might not know what I mean by that, but if you know who I am, you might see where I'm going with this. So why am I the dumbest genius? One of the most phrases I often hear is, "Why are you so smart and so stupid?" And I think this comes from God giving me an innate love of logic and hard conceptual problems, but not an innate ability in other aspects of life, like socially. Which then creates this paradox of me seeming really smart, yet at the same time, really dumb. And that is why I'm here at school, so that, of course, I can cultivate places in my life where I'm not super adept, while also having a place where I can use what talents God has given me to then further His kingdom. Nope. So Mr. V introduced this title to me, My Square Inch. Now, it comes from the quote by Abraham Kuyper. "There's not a square inch in the whole domain of our human existence over which Christ, who is sovereign over all, does not cry out, 'Mine.'" Now, you're seeing that title, you might be thinking, that's kind of the reverse. Why would it be my square inch if God claims every square inch? Well, as Mr. B explained to us many, many times, it's our job to cultivate what God has given us. God has given us a square inch of His creation, and it's our job to claim it for Him. So that is why I have my square inch. Now, I was wondering how I should organize my square inch, and I decided to do a tier list of the various through lines. Because what else would a dumb genius do? Completely miss the point on purpose and receiving some eye rolls from the teachers. So first we start off with F2. I put idolatry, discerner in F tier, which is kind of a scary thing, but it is nice to know, it is a good thing to know your own faults. And I feel like a lot of people in our society, which does include me, have a problem with identifying idols, and not even if they identify their idols, but getting rid of them. It's not that easy, and I find myself still struggling with it, which is why I put it in F tier. So the first thing in school that we did with idolatry discerning is we read Fahrenheit 451. In this book, people are so focused on pleasing people and making sure that everyone's happy and just all fine and serene, that they don't care about the truth. They burn books because books might make people think, and making you think is an uncomfortable experience. Another book we read was Brave New World, and Brave New World takes this idea of making sure thanks, Ellie, making sure no one's offended and takes it, dials it up to 11. The whole society is 100% about pleasure. Everything they do is 100% to achieve pleasure, and that's the one goal of their society. And these two books very much show the idolatry of pleasure. Now, in sophomore year, we studied the atomic bomb, and that is J. Robert Oppenheimer, as you may see, and he was the head of the Manhattan Project. And I find it very interesting is that one of his quotes after making the atomic bomb was, "Now I am become death, destroyer of worlds," because the atomic bomb was such a catastrophic weapon and can kill so many people. It's so interesting to see how the mindset of what he has then become after creating that. And this creates this idolatry of knowledge. At what point should we stop? What time should humanity stop? At Genesis 2:17, but you must not eat from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, for when you eat from it, you will certainly die. Even here in the Bible, we see there's an idolatry of knowledge, and a lot of times it's very hard for scientists and a lot of people to know when to stop. And that's what we studied sophomore year. Next we have is D tier. D tier. And in freaking work. And in D tier I put image reflector, because I didn't really see many opportunities I had of myself to do it, and I didn't really put myself out there to try to image reflect to other people. I'm kind of a stay within the Christian community person. I need to push myself out more into secular communities to then reflect God's image to them. And one aspect of image reflector we study here at the Vale is the House of the Scorpion. This book is about cloning, and it raised many questions about what it means to be human. And I found it very impossible to define that without the aspect of God. Because without God setting humans apart, we're almost the exact same as animals. There's literally nothing that really makes us different other than the fact that God had set us apart and given us these intelligences that he did. And that's what I find very hard, very sad about the secular world, is that taking God out of who we are just basically puts us on the same level as animals, which we're not. And then another thing that we do is service learning. And I found this a great way to reflect God's image as you serve people, because Jesus came to serve. And I have a reflection that I wrote after my first semester of service learning at Linwood. Taking care and helping people who need our help has really been a way of being an image bearer. Volunteering and helping those who need is what Christ has called us to do. We would talk to and interact with the elderly to show God's love to them, and show the workers God's love in us. And I find that that's actually a very good way of image reflecting, is serving, but we'll get to the servant worker later. And then another way of image reflector that I performed here at school was the physical fitness and self-defense IBU. This allowed me to be an image reflector by teaching me how to take care of my temple. My body is my temple for God, and you need to take care of it in order to reflect God's image. You need to be healthy in exercise and in diet to be able to show that you care about your body, which God has given you. Now we're going to C tier. So these are much more of the mediocre through lines, which is why they're in C tier. And the reason I put justice seeker in here, because it's a lot harder to be a justice seeker in a classroom. It's a lot harder, it's easy to talk about justice conceptually and think about what to know with it, but it's very hard to go out and do justice. Like, none of us are lawyers, none of us are judges. It's very hard. So we did the best we could in the classroom by studying it and making sure that if an opportunity ever arises in our own lives, and how we talk about and know people outside of the classroom, do it in a just way. And senior year, we read this book, Healing for a Broken World, and in it has Steve Monson's quote, justice has traditionally been defined as giving all persons their due. And I find this to be the definition that I then framed everything that I've learned about justice seeking. It's like making sure every person gets what they are due. And I feel like that is what God wants, because he made every man equal. So another aspect of what we did were biotech debates. What I did is I studied gene editing. Gene editing is where you edit genes. Self-explanatory. And it's most often used in the wombs for parents to want to create their own dream babies, as they were called. And it's creating giving them long hair, short hair, making them exactly what you want. And I found this very evil and was very happy I was on the side of get rid of it for debating, because it was. Anyway, so in this, we very much were able to learn how to articulate a point, how to make sure that we got across what we were trying to say and not fall into logical fallacies, so that our point was 100% received by the person and logically sound, so that we could effectively argue what we were trying to say. And if we can effectively argue what we're trying to say, we can then bring justice in the world. Another project we did was the marginalization project, and I picked mentally ill and disabled people because the project is about learning someone who's been cast aside or left out by society. And throughout history, this has happened many times to the mentally ill people. And even in today, a lot of people don't understand it, so they're kind of scared by it and don't know how to react when they see it. My main job for the project was to learn the history and learn the logistics of mentally ill and see why it happens and how it happens when someone's born, or what is happening in their brain. And I eventually came to the conclusion, as did Temple Grandin, who is an autistic spokesperson. She has many talks, so it's very good for us to learn from her, is that mentally ill people aren't worse. Their brain is just wired differently. It has the same type of wiring with all the neurons and everything. It's just hooked up in a different way that just makes it different to how we would perceive, like normal people would perceive life. And then another area where we learned about justice seeking was senior year language arts with Lord of the Flies. The boys are shipwrecked on an island and have no society. And this builds upon what we learned last year in Pomo with why we need government and why we need civilization to bring out justice in today's society, and why it's so important to think about what is justice and how we need to then bring it to fruition. The next one I have is God worshiper. And I'm going to be honest with God worshiper. It used to be, I always was just going through the motions. I'd show up to church and be like, yeah, Jesus. And it wasn't ever like something deeper for me until I came to Vail/Calvin. And because it allowed me to understand and participate on a deeper level. There was where we would actually try to understand why and what and how we can actually worship. And one ways we would do this is chapel. Being a God worshiper, we would actually practice worshiping God by going to chapel. I used to view chapel as a way of getting out of class. Back in middle school, I used to be like, yes, no math. But then coming here and having a student-led chapel that happens every Friday, I started to notice I really liked Fridays a lot more, and I was wondering why. I think it's because I get to worship God, and I finally, coming to this chapel, it made me feel a deeper connection than what I had been previously doing, which was church. But yeah, so. And then another way that we've been God worshiper is the seniors have to write a hymn. And this is a different aspect and a different way to attacking this through line. We would write our own hymns, and then that's how we would worship God. It was kind of difficult for me myself to write lyrics, but once I did, I felt really glad that I was able to understand what all these people who've written songs have done and see that aspect of God worship. The other one we have in here is Earthkeeper. Now, Earthkeeper was never something I really thought about myself when I was growing up. I either had the excuse, the earth is too big, what can I do? There's nothing that one person can do, or the fact that it's pushed so heavily in the secular world that that's not something Christians should do or associate with. But if you look at the Bible, it very much says we need to take care of the earth. The passages about the talents and what God has given us and the cultural mandate are all very good examples of what we need to do with God's earth. So a class that was very much in keeping with this was environmental science. And Mr. V taught us that if you want people to take care of the earth, you must teach them to love it. And this very much worked during environmental science, because we learned about what was happening in the classroom, and then we went out and actually did and saw what was happening that we learned about. And that is such a surreal experience, is that all these aspects of environmental science we can then actually see happen and actually be able to take care of the earth after learning about it academically in the classroom. Another thing that I did was experiential learning. Caleb Cruz and I went to Springbrook Nature Center and just did whatever they needed us to do. And it being a nature center is earthkeeping in itself. So we also, in that, studied the importance of green spaces and how not every green space needs to be the same, which is why you see the cherry. Because that was an interesting thought to me, is that at first I was thinking, oh, everything needs to be like a national park and no one touches it and just like that. But there's so many ways we can have nature in the city, around the city, outside the city. All these different ways that allow us to be an earthkeeper in and of itself. And I have a reflection I wrote while in experiential learning. With the start of my experiential learning project, I am learning about earthkeeping, and I am earthkeeping in the world. It is a great experience to use the strength God has given me to care for the earth. Next we have B tier. These are above mediocre. So first off, we have servant worker. And servant worker, if you all couldn't guess, the best class for servant worker is service learning. And originally, I didn't really understand service learning. I was like, why are we doing this? This is dumb. We shouldn't be doing this. This is a waste of time. We could be actually learning. That is a fallacy in of itself, because there's such a great learning that can come from service that you can't learn academically at all. People can tell you about service and tell you what there is to mean when you serve, but unless you actually serve, you don't get that lesson. You don't learn that. And I went to Linwood and Crestview and Northport for service learning, and the last time I went to Crestview, I kind of realized something, that the people there, so a lot of them are forgotten by their families. They're just put there to just keep to not die, basically. And so I realized as I was there that I might be the only smile they see. And it kind of put this weight on my shoulders that I need to be the best person I possibly can when I'm there. I need to show them and serve them and be humble and just try to make them have a great 2 hours, because it might be the last smile they see of their life, because life is unpredictable. Another aspect of servant worker that I have found is basketball. Now you might be thinking, why is he saying basketball? But being at a Christian school, you can very much openly talk about your faith during athletics. And one verse that we've memorized is 2 Chronicles 15:7. As for you, be strong and courageous, for your work shall be rewarded. And this basketball has given me the mentality of trying to work hard. And being a servant worker, you need to be able to work hard. And then being captain of the basketball team, in order to lead someone, you need to serve them, as Jesus is our King, and he came down to serve us. me being captain, I need to get below my team and support them from the ground up. I need to work hard to make sure that captain's practice runs smoothly, and then show them and try to be an example and push forward and work hard. Another thing that we do here at Avail is Senior Passion Project, and what I did was the Strength of My Heart with Emma and Gabe, whoever Gabe is. And I really like this, like topping off the cake kind of, because we learn about service through all these other aspects of school, service learning, experiential learning, and then taking what we've learned, we then make our own way of serving, and it's just an incredible way to be able to prepare us for the world and be able to make us confident in our abilities to do stuff, because being 18, you don't think, I can raise $4,000, but we did. I don't have good transitions, okay, don't laugh. The other one we have in B tier is community builder. Now, I am naturally an introvert, but no one believes me. I don't know why, but the reason I've been able to trick you all is because of this community. I used to be so much in my own shell, in my own world, not really wanting to talk to anyone ever at all until I came here. I was really able to branch out because all these so kind people who wanted to be my bus buddy, who all had open arms and were accepting of my weirdness that allowed me to be able to not seem like an introvert even though I naturally am. And one of these aspects of community building, we have two pictures over there, is Sconewood. Now, Sconewood always seemed weird to me, and it felt like I was tricking the teachers, like, yes, instant 2 days of vacation, no school. But it suddenly dawned on me that Sconewood allows for a community to be built before we even go to school, and it makes people look forward to actually wanting to go to school. And it's actually a great thing for us to do, because we then build a community and then we participate in school. And then we have the Milwaukee trip over there, the canoe trip, and the Washington, D.C. trip. All these trips are great for letting us as Christians be in fellowship with one another. We're able to be closer and tightly knit with all these memories of these trips that we had and be in community while on those trips. Especially with the advisory trips, because our advisory is basically your family, and it always felt like that. It always felt like everyone was some weird, disjointed, dysfunctional family, but we all laughed and we all had a good time with each other every morning. Next we have A tier, and in A tier I put creation enjoyer. Creation enjoyer is basically go into nature and enjoy it, of course, self-explanatory. And we have the canoe trip, the Milwaukee trip on this again, because the canoe trip, as we see those two pictures, you're going down the river, you're in creation, and you just see the grandeur of God while being in it, and you're enjoying what He has created. And it's just amazing to see. And then also with the Milwaukee trip, we did that as well and saw just these amazing structures and rocks that God had made and put into place. And then also with experiential learning, Caleb Cruz and I went out and enjoyed parks and really looked at them and found out about them. And there's literally me enjoying creation, frolicking in the woods, and a deer. The next we have is beauty creating. I like making things. It's why beauty creating is in A tier. I often like to use my hands, use my talents to try to make something. The first one is poetry, which was a little weird for me because I'm not used to poetry. It doesn't usually come naturally to me, but sophomore year, I had these inspirations to make these poems, and I feel like this is the best poem I have that I made, and which was a great experience for me to be able to create beauty in a way that's unconventional to me. Another way that I created beauty with a special effects IP, that I got to learn how to script and shoot videos and create beauty through a much more technical field, which I really enjoyed. Another way of beauty creating was the baking I used. Baking, there's two concepts of beauty. The presentation has to be beautiful, and the taste has to be beautiful. And creating this beauty through these chemical reactions and being able to then create beauty in the taste, and then figuring out how you want to present your food to then create beauty in of itself as well. And then, of course, theater. Very much beauty creator. I've always enjoyed being able to get into the mindset of different people, being able to figure out how a character would act, how a character would behave, whether it be a cowardly lion or a professor or an evil professor, and just being able to be a part of something and create a beautiful story overall was a great aspect and a great thing for me to be able to do. We're not watching the video. S tier. And if you know me, you knew this was going to be in here. Of course, I love order to discover. I love science, I love chemistry, I love everything. This is just my nerd out page. Human anatomy and physiology was amazing to be able to study. The separation of cells, the creation of proteins, photosynthesis, and cellular respiration. Those things were literally happening in my body as I was learning about them. And just knowing that fact just blew my mind. It's just, it's great. Anyway. And then the unit circle project, it was amazing to see how the math is set up and how it's already there and how it's discovered. It's not, we don't create math. Math is already there. And this order and this natural fluidity to everything is just fits perfectly. And it's just so amazing to see. Another thing we did was robotics. And it was really great to be able to build bridges and then have a robot build the bridge and then cross it. And it's like, you don't think you could build a robot, but we did build a robot. And just discovering the order of the mechanics and allowing that to then come to fruition was just mind-blowing. And then we have physics as well, which I love physics. And just the fact that we can describe what happens in the world with a simple equation of simple numbers to just, I can figure out how far a ball will travel just knowing how hard someone threw it and what angle. The fact that that's set up in the world is just amazing. I know I'm saying amazing a lot, because it is, okay? Another thing we did was build wind turbines, and this was also amazing because we studied electricity and then were able to apply what we learned about it to then make it. We made electricity, and being able to do that is such a great opportunity, and it's just so amazing. I can't stop saying it's amazing. But I'm really thankful for all the classes I've taken that were very heavily order discovery. I loved every single class that I had of order discovery. And it's just, I'm gonna miss it. Except I'm going to college, never mind. We're not there yet. What next? So when I was thinking about this, the first thing that came to my mind was Indiana Jones in The Last Crusade. There's a scene where he has to take a leap of faith and be caught by God, basically. And I realized that's kind of what my future is like. I have some sense of the direction I need to go, but I need to be caught by God and just take a leap of faith towards where I think He's leading me. As He has given me a love of physics and rockets and flight and space, so I'm going to Dordt University to get a mechanical undergrad and with the hopes of getting an aerospace graduate. But who knows? We'll see where God leads me to then further flourish his kingdom.